I grew up in a small town where nothing really happened, at least. That's what everyone liked to say. You know the kind of place. Quiet roads. Same people every day. Folks waving at you like they've known you forever. Back then, it felt safe. Like nothing bad could actually reach you there. And for a long time, I believed that. But small towns have a way of hiding things. Not erasing them, just pushing them down like everyone silently agrees. We don't talk about that. This is one of those things. I was 7 years old. Summer of 1961, just a normal afternoon, me and two of my friends were out near the road in front of my house. Just killing time, throwing rocks at a fence, arguing about dumb stuff, running back and forth like kids do. The road itself was quiet. Hardly any traffic. Maybe one car every few minutes. If that, no one really paid attention to it. That's why, when we heard the engine, it stood out immediately. It was loud. Too loud. Like someone was pushing their car way harder than they should. One of my friends actually laughed. Said something like, "Yo, who drives like that out here?" Then we saw it. The car came around the bend. And right away, something was off. It wasn't straight. It kept drifting. Like the driver couldn't hold the wheel steady. It swerved once, then overcorrected, then swerved again, and it didn't slow down. Not even a little. Everything happened fast after that. The car shot forward, hit the edge of the road, and slammed straight into the ditch right in front of us. The sound was violent metal crunching, glass shattering, then just silence. None of us moved. Not right away. It didn't feel real. Stuff like that didn't happen there. Not in our town. Then the driver's door creaked open, and a woman stepped out. At first glance, she looked hurt. Her clothes were covered in blood, her hair messy, her movements unsteady, like she could barely keep herself upright, but something about it felt wrong. Not just she got in a crash wrong. Something deeper. The blood didn't look fresh. It looked smeared, like it had been there for a while. She took a few slow steps forward. Then she stopped, and she looked straight at me. Not at all of us, just me. And then she said my name. Clear.com? No hesitation. My name. I remember this weird feeling hitting me all at once. Like something just dropped in my chest because I knew. Right then. I had never seen her before, not once. But the way she said it, it wasn't a guess. It sounded like she already knew exactly who I was. She started walking toward us, slow at first, like she was testing her balance, then quicker, more direct. And I didn't understand why, but something in my head just went, "This isn't right." Then I saw what she was holding. It was a shotgun. And that's when everything changed. No one said anything. No one needed to. We just ran. I didn't even think about it. My body moved before my brain could catch up. Just turned and ran as fast as I could behind me. I heard her voice again, not screaming, not yelling, calling. She kept calling my name over and over, like she wasn't angry, just focused, and that somehow made it worse. I ran toward my house, my feet hitting the ground so hard I could barely keep balance. My heart was pounding like crazy, like it was trying to get out of my chest. And I could hear her behind me, not close, but not far either, like she knew exactly where I was going. And for a second, I had this thought: she's not chasing randomly. She's following me. She was following me, not guessing, not wandering, following. I could hear her footsteps behind me, not running, just steady. That's slow. Controlled pace, like she wasn't worried about losing me, like she already knew. I couldn't get far. I remember my foot slipping once on the dirt near the edge of the road, and for a second, I almost went down in that 1 second. Felt like forever, because in that moment, I thought, this is it, she's right behind me. But I caught myself, kept going, pushed harder than I ever had before. I could see my house now. Front porch. Screen door. Everything felt just a little too far away. And then I heard another voice. A man shouting loud, sharp, the kind of voice that cuts through everything. I didn't stop to look right away. I just kept running. But something about it made me turn. Just for a second. And when I did, I saw my neighbor. He had come running out of his yard. Straight toward her, no hesitation. He slammed into her. Full force. They both hit the ground hard. Rolling into the dirt near the ditch, the shotgun flew out of her hands, landing a few feet away. For a moment, everything was chaos, shouting, struggling, dust in the air. Then more people started coming out of their houses. Another neighbor ran over, grabbed the gun, pulled it away. Someone else pinned her arms down, and she didn't scream. Didn't fight the way you'd expect. She just kept trying to look past them, toward me. Even from that distance, I could feel it, like her focus hadn't changed at all. I turned back and ran the rest of the way home. I don't even remember opening the door. I just remember being inside, slamming it shut, locking it, and standing there, trying to breathe. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to grab onto the wall just to stay upright. A few seconds later, my mom came rushing in. She must have heard everything. She grabbed me, pulled me close, kept asking, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I couldn't even answer. I just nodded. Outside, I could still hear voices. More people now. Sirens in the distance. And then, quiet again. That night, everything felt different. No one said much during dinner. My dad barely touched his food. He kept staring at the table, like he was somewhere else. I remember trying to look at him, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he didn't. Later, when I went to bed, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound felt louder. The house creaking, wind outside, even my own breathing. And all I could think about was her voice. The way she said my name, not loud, not angry, just certain, like she had already said it before, more than once. At some point, I got out of bed, walked quietly down the hallway, trying not to make any noise, and I stopped near the kitchen. That's when I heard them, my parents, talking. Low voices, like they didn't want me to hear. But I stayed there, just out of sight, listening. At first, I couldn't make out much, just pieces. Then my mom said something that made everything go still. She knew where to go. There was a pause. And my dad didn't answer right away. Then he said, I didn't think she would actually do anything. Something about the way he said it felt wrong, like he wasn't surprised. Like, part of him already knew this could happen. I leaned a little closer, trying to hear more. My mom's voice came again, sharper this time. She came here for them. Another pause. Longer. And then she called his name. Everything went quiet after that. No more talking. I just stood there in the dark, trying to understand what I had just heard. Because up until that moment, I thought this was random, an accident. Something that just happened, but now, it didn't feel that way anymore. It felt planned. It felt planned. I went back to my room after that, but I didn't sleep, not even close. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, going over everything in my head, the crash, the blood, the way she walked toward me, the way she said my name, and now, what I heard in the kitchen. She knew where to go. She came here for them. That didn't sound random, not even a little. The next morning, everything was quiet, too quiet. No one talked about what happened, not at breakfast. Not before my dad left the house. Not even when my mom walked me from room to room like she didn't want me out of her sight. It was like everyone had agreed. Without saying it, we're not going to talk about this. But you can feel things like that. Even as a kid, something had changed. My mom didn't let me go outside that day, or the next, or the next. Even when my friends came by, she turned them away, said I wasn't feeling well. But that wasn't it. She just didn't want me out there, not where someone could see me. And my dad. He barely looked at me. Not in a mean way, just distant. Like every time he saw me, he was thinking about something else, something he didn't want to face. A few days later, I saw the police car outside again. I watched from the window as two officers stood near the road, talking to my parents. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see my mom's face. She looked shaken, not surprised, not confused, just shaken. And my dad. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking down, not saying much. That same week, everything started happening fast. Boxes came out, closets emptied, drawers cleaned out. No explanation, no discussion. We were leaving. I asked my mom why. Once, she just said we're going somewhere safer. Safer. That word didn't make sense to me back then, because I thought we were already safe. A few weeks later, we were gone, left the house, the town, everything behind. No goodbyes, no looking back, and for a long time, no one ever talked about it again. Years passed. I grew up, moved on, tried not to think about it. But some things don't really go away. They just sit there in the back of your mind, waiting. And one night, years later, I finally asked my mom about it, just once. We were sitting in the kitchen, and I brought it up. She didn't answer right away, just looked at me for a second, like she was deciding how much to say. Then she sighed and said, "They found something in her car." That got my attention. I asked, "What?" And she hesitated again, before saying a piece of paper. I remember leaning forward a little, waiting. She said it had names written on it. I didn't say anything. I think part of me already knew what she was going to say next. My name. Your father's name. She paused, then added, "And yours." Right at the top, I felt that same drop in my stomach again, the same one from that day. The next story happened in a small coastal town. Up in Maine, the kind of place where everything feels quiet. Almost too quiet, old wooden houses, narrow streets, and buildings that have been standing longer than anyone can remember. If you've ever been to a place like that, you know what I mean? There's this heavy feeling like the town has history, but not all of it is good. There was one place in that town that everyone knew about, the old post office. By the time I first saw it, it wasn't really a building anymore, just a burned-out structure, half collapsed, blackened from fire. The roof was gone. Most of the walls were barely holding up, and the windows, just empty frames. But even as a kid, I could tell something about it felt off. Not just this place burned down off. Something deeper. People didn't go near it, not because there was a fence or a sign telling them to stay away. They just didn't. And in a small town, that kind of silent agreement means something. If you asked anyone about it, you'd get the same answer every time. It was a fire. That's it. No details, no story. Just a fire. And the way people said it made it clear. They didn't want to talk about it at first. I didn't think much of it. I was a kid. Stuff like that didn't really matter to me. But over time, I started noticing things. Like how no one ever mentioned the people who died there. Because there were people inside, everyone knew that. The postmaster and 2 assistants. But no one talked about them. Not their names. Not their families. Nothing. It was like they never existed. And that's when it started to feel strange. Because in a small town, people don't forget each other. Unless there's a reason to. Years went by. And I eventually stopped thinking about it. Moved on. Left town for a while. Lived my life. Then one summer, I came back. And that's when I heard the real story. It didn't come from someone trying to tell it. It came from someone who wasn't supposed to. There was an old man in town. Lived alone. Kept to himself. Didn't talk much. Didn't really interact with anyone. People said he used to work at that post office back before it burned down, but no one ever confirmed it. And honestly, no one really asked. Then one year, he got sick, bad enough that people knew he wasn't going to recover. And in small towns, when something like that happens, people show up, not because they're close, but because that's just what you do. One of the people who went to see him was my uncle. And when my uncle came back, he looked different, quiet, like he had heard something. He wasn't sure he should repeat. At first, he didn't say anything. But a few days later, we were sitting outside, just talking. And somehow, that building came up, the old post office. And that's when he said something. That completely changed the way I looked at that place. He said, that wasn't just a fire. I remember asking him what he meant, and he hesitated, like he was deciding how much to say. Then he looked at me and said, "You ever notice how nobody talks about the people who died there?" I said, "Yeah," and he nodded slowly. Then said, "That's because the story everyone knows isn't the real one." And right there, I could feel it. That same feeling you get when you realize something you thought was simple isn't simple at all. I asked him what actually happened, and he took a second before answering. Then he said, "They didn't die in a robbery. They were locked inside. They were locked inside." I remember just staring at him for a second, trying to figure out if he was serious, because that didn't make any sense. The story everyone knew, the one that had been repeated for years, was that it was some kind of robbery. Something went wrong. Fire started. People got trapped. Simple, but this sounded different. I asked him who locked them in, and he didn't answer right away, just leaned back a little, looked out toward the road, like he was replaying something in his head. Then he said, "The postmaster." That was the part that didn't sit right, because the postmaster was supposed to be one of the victims. He was supposed to be inside that building when it burned. I told him that, and he nodded. "Yeah," he said, "that's what they told everyone." That's when I started feeling that same thing again. That slow, uncomfortable realization that something wasn't adding up. I asked him how he knew this, and he said, "Because that old man told me, the one who used to work there." He said when he visited him, the guy didn't start talking right away. At first, it was just normal conversation, small talk, nothing important. Then, out of nowhere, he brought it up, the fire. And according to my uncle, the way he talked about it wasn't like someone remembering something. It sounded like someone finally letting something out, something they had been holding on to. For a long time, he said the postmaster had been acting strange in the weeks before the fire. Not in an obvious way at first. Just small things, things that didn't feel right. Like how he would forget conversations that had just happened, or repeat the same question, like he hadn't heard the answer. At first, no one thought much of it. People brushed it off, said maybe he was tired, overworked, something like that. But then, the assistants started acting the same way. All three of them. That's when it started getting noticed. The old man said there were moments when they would just stop, right in the middle of doing something, not moving, not talking, just standing there, like they were waiting for something. And if someone said their name or got their attention, they would snap out of it, like nothing happened, like they didn't even realize they had stopped. At that point, people started getting uncomfortable, but no one said anything out loud. Because again, small town. You don't accuse people of acting strange, you just ignore it. Pretend everything's normal, until it isn't. Then the old man told him about one specific night. He said the postmaster stayed late at the building. Everyone else had left. Or at least, that's what he thought. He was finishing up some paperwork, getting ready to head out, when he heard something upstairs. At first, he assumed it was nothing. Maybe someone forgot something. Came back. But the sound didn't stop. It wasn't footsteps exactly. It was movement. Slow, uneven, So he went upstairs. And when he reached the top, he saw them, all three of them, standing in the hallway, not moving, not talking, just facing him. And the way they were standing wasn't normal. Too still, too straight, like they were trying to hold a position instead of just standing naturally. He called out to them. No response. Then one of them stepped forward, slow, controlled. And when it spoke, the old man said, that's when he knew something was wrong, because the voice didn't sound right, not like a normal voice. It sounded like it was being copied. The words were correct, but the tone, the rhythm, it felt off, like someone had learned how to speak, but didn't fully understand how people actually talk. And that's when the postmaster became convinced. Something wasn't right. Something was inside that building, and it wasn't human. Something was inside that building, and it wasn't human. That's what the postmaster believed. And from that moment on, everything changed. According to the old man, he didn't confront them again that night. He didn't argue, didn't try to figure it out. He just left, walked out of that building, locked the door behind him, and went home. But he didn't sleep, not even for a minute, because once that idea got into his head, it didn't leave. The way they moved, the way they stood there, the way that voice sounded. It didn't feel like people anymore. It felt like something pretending to be people. And the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that whatever was inside that building wasn't supposed to be there. And worse, it wasn't supposed to get out. The next morning, he went back, earlier than usual, before anyone else would be there. Or at least, before anything else would be there. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and for a moment, everything looked normal. Too normal. No signs of anything wrong. No noise, no movement. Just silence. But he didn't stay long. He went straight to the front door again, stepped back outside, and locked it. Then he went around the building, closing every window, securing every possible way out, making sure nothing inside could leave. And once he was sure, he set the fire. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just lit it and walked away. By the time anyone noticed, it was already too late. The flames had spread through the building. Fast, people gathered, tried to do something, anything, but there was no saving it. The fire burned everything, and the official story was written that same day. Robbery. Gone wrong. 3 people trapped inside. Case closed. But according to the old man, that's not what the police were told. Because when they questioned the postmaster, he told them everything. What he saw, what he believed, why he did it. And they didn't believe him. Not completely. But they also didn't ignore it. Because something about the situation didn't add up. The way the bodies were found, the condition they were in, it didn't match a normal fire. And that was enough to make them nervous. So instead of digging deeper, they buried it, changed the story, called it a robbery, and made sure no one asked questions. Because a small town like that couldn't afford something like this getting out. Not just the fear, but the attention. People would stop coming. Businesses would suffer. The whole town could collapse. So they kept it quiet. And over time, people stopped asking, stopped thinking about it. Except for one thing. Years later, when they started clearing that area to rebuild part of the town, they dug up the ground near where the building once stood, and they found something. A grave, marked with the postmaster's name. Which didn't make sense. Because according to the official story, he died in that fire. So they opened it. And inside, there was nothing. No body. No remains. Just empty space. And no one could explain it. Not the police, not the town. No one, even now. People who live there don't go near that spot. Not because of the fire, but because of what might have been inside it and the possibility that the postmaster didn't die that night. Or worse, that whatever he locked in that building found a way out. Because if it really was something pretending to be human, then maybe it didn't burn like everything else. Maybe it just waited. And in a place like that, where people don't ask questions, it wouldn't be that hard to start pretending again. The next story comes from a farm deep in the Midwest where people believed they were being watched over. And what happened there is the one story I still have trouble explaining. I didn't grow up in that place, but I spent enough time there to know something wasn't right. It was a farm out in rural Minnesota, miles away from anything, no nearby town, no neighbors you could just walk to, just land, fields, trees, and one long dirt road that led in and out. I went there one summer when I was in my late teens. It belonged to a distant relative, someone my family trusted. They said it would be good for me. Quiet place, good people, strong values. And when I first got there, that's exactly what it felt like. Everyone was welcoming, smiling, polite, almost too polite. The kind of people who look you in the eye when they talk, who speak calmly, who never seem rushed. At first, it felt comforting, like stepping into a slower, simpler world. But after a few days, I started noticing things. Little things. The way conversations worked. People didn't really joke, didn't talk about normal stuff. Everything somehow came back to faith. Every topic, every answer, always led back to it. At meals, before work, before bed, they would pray. And not just short prayers, long ones. Sometimes 10, 15 minutes. Eyes closed, heads down, voices low but steady. And no one ever broke focus. Not once. It felt intense. But I told myself, that's just how they are. Different doesn't mean wrong. That's what I kept telling myself. Until the first night something happened. I was staying in a small room. Upstairs in the main house, old wooden floor, thin walls. Everything creaked when you moved. That night, I woke up suddenly. No reason at first, just awake. And then I heard it. Voices coming from downstairs. At first, I thought maybe someone just got up early. But when I looked at the clock, it was just after 2 a.m. And the voices weren't normal conversation. They were low, repetitive, almost like whispering, but not quite. I sat there for a minute, just listening, trying to figure out what they were saying, but I couldn't make out words, just patterns, like the same sounds, over and over, and something about it made it hard to go back to sleep. So I got up, walked quietly to the door, and opened it just a little. The hallway was dark, but I could see light coming from downstairs. And the voices were clearer now. Still low, still repeating, but louder. I stepped out, slowly, trying not to make the floor creak, and I made my way to the top of the stairs. That's when I saw them. Everyone, standing in the living room, in a circle, head slightly lowered, not moving, and the way they were speaking. It wasn't like prayer. It was too steady, too controlled. Like they were all following the same exact rhythm, at the same exact time. No one leading, no one stopping. Just continuing. Over and over. I stayed there, watching. Longer than I probably should have, because something about it didn't feel right. Not peaceful, not calming. Just off. And then one of them stopped. Just suddenly, and slowly, turned their head. Not toward the others. Toward me. Toward me. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But then another one stopped. Then another. One by one, the voices faded out, until the room was completely silent, and every single one of them was facing the stairs, facing me. I didn't move, didn't say anything. I just stood there, half in the dark, trying to understand what I had just walked into. Then the man who owned the farm, the one everyone seemed to listen to, stepped forward, slow, calm, and said, "You should be asleep." His voice wasn't angry. That almost made it worse. I mumbled something, said I heard noise. "Couldn't sleep?" He nodded, then said, "We were praying." I remember looking around again, at all of them, still standing there, completely still. And something about it didn't match that explanation. But I didn't question it. I just said sorry, and went back to my room. Closed the door, sat on the bed, and stayed awake for the rest of the night. The next morning, everything was normal, like nothing had happened. People smiling, talking calmly, going about their work. No mention of the night before. No strange looks. Nothing. And for a moment, I almost convinced myself it wasn't as weird as it felt. That maybe I was just overthinking it. Until a few days later, one of the kids on the farm got sick. He couldn't have been older than 10. Started with a cough, then a fever. By the second day, he could barely get out of bed. And I remember thinking, okay, someone's going to take him to a doctor. That's what you do. But no one did. They just kept him in his room, brought him water, sat beside him, and prayed. That was it. No medicine, no outside help, just prayer. I asked about it once, tried to keep it casual. Said something like, "Shouldn't he see someone?" And the response I got was immediate. "He's being cared for." That was it. No discussion. Just shut down. That's when it started feeling different. Not just strange, controlled. Like there were rules you didn't question, and everyone followed them. Without hesitation, the boy got worse. By the third night, I could hear him coughing from down the hall. Weak, struggling, and again. They gathered. Same as before. Living room circle. Same low voices. Same rhythm. Same pattern repeating. Except this time, I stayed in my room. I didn't go out to watch, but I could hear it. And somehow, that felt worse. Because now, I knew exactly what was happening. And I knew no one was going to stop it. At some point during the night, the coughing stopped. Completely. And the voices downstairs got louder. Stronger. Like they thought. It was working. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked downstairs slowly. Already knowing something was wrong, no one was talking. No one was moving fast. Just silence. Then I saw them. Standing in the living room again. Not in a circle this time. Facing one direction, toward a closed door. The boys' room. And something in my chest just dropped. Because in that moment, I knew, without anyone saying it, he wasn't getting better. He wasn't getting better. No one said it out loud, but you could feel it. The way everyone stood there. Silent. Still. Like they were waiting. Not hoping. Waiting. I stayed where I was for a second, then slowly stepped closer. No one stopped me. No one even looked at me. Their attention was fixed on that door. The man who ran the place stood closest to it, hands folded, head slightly lowered, like he was listening for something on the other side. Then, without saying a word, he reached for the handle and opened the door. The room inside was dim, curtains drawn, air heavy, stale. The boy was lying on the bed, completely still. For a second, I thought he was gone. Then his chest moved. Just barely. Slow, uneven. The man stepped inside. The rest followed. One by one. Filling the room. No one rushed. No one panicked. Just quiet movement. Like this was expected. I stayed near the doorway. Didn't want to go in, but couldn't look away. They gathered around the bed, forming another circle, and then they started again. That same pattern, low voices, repeating, steady. But this time, it felt different, heavier, like something was building. The boy's breathing changed. At first, slow, weak, then sudden, leave sharp, like he was trying to catch his breath. His hands twitched, then tightened. And that's when someone said it. "He's fighting it." Another voice answered, "No, it's fighting him." I felt my stomach drop. Because they weren't talking about sickness, they believed something else was happening. Something inside him? The man at the head of the bed leaned closer, placed a hand on the boy's chest, and started speaking louder than the others. Not shouting, but firm, like he was giving instructions. The boy's eyes opened, and for a second, I thought he's okay. But then I saw them. His eyes didn't look right. They were open, but unfocused, like he wasn't looking at anything. Or worse, like he wasn't seeing us at all. His mouth moved, but the sound that came out wasn't his voice. It was deeper, strained, like something pushing through him. A few people stepped back, not out of fear, but like they expected it. The man didn't move. He just kept talking, kept repeating the same words, over and over, and the rest followed. Faster now, louder. The room felt tight, like the air was getting pulled out of it. And I realized something in that moment. No one here thought this was wrong. No one thought this was dangerous. They believed this was exactly what needed to happen. And that scared me more than anything. Because if something went wrong, no one was going to stop it. I backed away slowly. No one noticed. Or maybe they didn't care. I stepped out into the hallway, then turned and walked. Not fast at first, just steady, then quicker. Then I grabbed my bag. Didn't even pack properly. Just threw what I could inside and headed for the door. No one followed me. No one called out. The voices from that room just kept going, like I was already gone. I left that place that morning. Didn't say goodbye, didn't look back, and I never went back again. A few weeks later, I heard what happened. The boy didn't make it. They said his body gave out, said they did everything they could, but I knew what that meant. It meant they never tried anything else. No doctor, no help, just belief. And whatever they thought was inside him, they believed they could handle it, even now. I still think about that night, about the way they stood there, so calm, so certain, like they were doing the right thing. And the part that stays with me the most is that moment, when his eyes opened, because for a second, I thought he was coming back. But the way he looked, it didn't feel like him anymore. And sometimes, I wonder if they were wrong about what was happening, or worse, if they were right. Because if they were right, then whatever was in that room that night was never treated, never stopped, just left. And in a place like that, where no one questions anything, it wouldn't take much for something like that to happen again. And maybe that's why, even now, I don't like quiet places like that. Because sometimes silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it just means no one is asking questions.